What's going on YouTube? It's Calsoscope back on another video. In today's video I'm going to be showing you guys how to make dramatic lighting on any composition that you really want to do, and we're going to hop right to it. So I got this picture of Tyrese Maxey. I already have his jersey swapped and all things like that. I just decided to go with the New York Knicks because there's been some speculation that the Knicks are maybe trying to get him, so I thought it might be cool to see him in the New York Knicks jersey. Okay, so the first thing that I did was obviously the jersey swap and then masked him out and everything. But after that, I had to pick a correct background to put him on, or whatever you want to call it as correct. So this is the background that I have for him. And the first thing I did was just make the background blurred out so it would fit his composition, or the subject. So this is him as the subject, and this is the crowd behind him, right? So I just use content aware fill. My content aware fill, it's shortcut is S. And to use content aware fill, I'll just show you guys a quick example of it. You would just press Alt or Command if you're on the Mac, press content aware fill, and then it just fills content aware pretty much. So when you're doing content aware fill, you need to get a subject on a different picture. You only need to worry about the parts of the body that's going to be not covered by the subject. So see, like I still have some of him inside, but you really can't tell the difference, and that's the whole point of content aware fill, right? So the other things that I did with this is I'm going to go back all the way to just like the first picture, and this is the fill. Then I added levels because I wanted it to be a dark scene, because this is how we're going to make our lighting really dramatic. So with my levels, I've made sure to bring this level slider from the middle. I dragged it downwards, okay? And after I dragged it downwards, I masked out the part that I wanted to be with highlight. So I did it with the polygon lasso tool, but you can just use any real tool if you really want to. So let's like make it doesn't have to be exact, but make a pretty accurate selection of where you want to go with your shades. And then once you see that harsh line there and you're like good with your shades, just soften it up, dropping your flow down on your brush to soften up the area. And that's going to help you to make your scene just look more dramatic, because you're just only getting that spotlight. So with that spotlight, we also have to figure out some things, and I wanted the light to be blue, so I picked that blue hue and saturation. Pick the blue hue and saturation. You see, if I just slide this, it would turn to any other color. I picked the blue hue and saturation on the court, and then I also used blending options, and I used blend if, and I slid my whites down, separating this part by just pressing Alt or Command, and then slide that part, and it makes it softer. I'll show you guys. It makes it softer on the court. So that's how I got that done. And then also I just put a reflection, so I made a duplicate copy of Tyrese Maxey. So if I were to just take another duplicate, pressing Ctrl J, just showing you guys an example, I pressed Ctrl T to get into my transform, then I right clicked, flipped it horizontally, and then I distorted him down to there to make a reflection. And then what I use for when I use reflections is I use blur gallery. So I go to filter, blur gallery, and field blur. Now field blur is good because it gives you a variance between your blur. If you're just using Gaussian blur or something like that, it's going to not really do a great job of covering up the whole thing. It's gonna just like blur it out as one piece instead of a gradual blur into it, right? So that's why you got to use, or try to use one of the blur gallery tools instead of just like the normal blurs like you see, Gaussian blur, radial blur. Those aren't very good and not highly advanced. You want to get as advanced as you can. All right, and then the last two things that I added for the crowd was just like a black shade under his feet to make it more dark underneath his feet. And then I added a fill of a crowd, and this fill of a crowd is just, I just added that fill crowd because I needed it to be darker there. Alright, so that's pretty much it for that portion of it. And then I went and on my subject, I didn't talk about this, but on my subject, I knew it wanted to be a top blue spotlight on him. So these are all the adjustments that I had to make to get it to where I wanted it to be. So like I had mentioned before, you just gotta play around with your hue and saturations, and your rim lights for your hue and saturation are going to be, let's see, yes, these are my rim lights. Your rim lights are going to be the high, oh, here they are. one sec. Oh yeah, they were here. Okay. Yeah, so your rim lights have to be your highest lightness. Always put your saturation up to 100, and then if you want to use blend options, separate the shadow a little bit to blend it in with the skin a little bit more. And that's what I did for the top portion. And then I added subsequent lights. See how they go down from 47 to 33 lightness, and then the last one, it's at -28, and that was just to add a little bit on the jersey and just a little bit more supporting light. And then I also used exposure, and the reason that I used exposure, I can go back off of this black. I used an exposure layer because I wanted to make it transition. Like, see how it just doesn't really transition if it's just like that, or just like this, it doesn't really transition. So if I add the exposure on and then paint it on white, because white reveals, black takes away. Paint it on my white colors on my layer mask, it darkens them in areas. Right, so paint on with white to darken, use exposure, and then you can actually use some brightness on some of the key highlights that you want. Even though you added your hue and saturation, you might still want to use some exposure to heighten up some of the brightness. That's what I've been using recently. And then levels, this was just the overall thing that I added to them. I usually like to add levels when I'm all done, just to make it match the scene a little bit more. And so that's that layer. And then I just had my foreground effects and my film. So my foreground effects were my color lookup that I chose. You guys can choose whatever kind of color lookups you want, color balance, whatever you want. It's like, these are all things like it's whatever you want. But then for the light, the way I do spotlights is I'm just gonna repeat what I did on here. So it was in blue, but I'll just do white just for the time being. So you just really paint a light on there, then you go to control transform. You're gonna right click, press perspective, and twist. See how I twist from the top right corner to make a spotlight, and that literally is a spotlight right there. Then you're just gonna turn it to 90 degrees or wherever your spotlight's hitting from, and then just adjust as need be, and that's how you create a spotlight. Alright, so I added my spotlight in, and then for a linear dodge I added a little blue layer just to make it a little bit brighter underneath, and then just added my color balances and level adjustments and things like that. And then for my last thing is my film overlay. So film overlay, pretty self-explanatory. Just painted in some film, and this is the layer. It's just a film texture that I used, and that is how we got our dramatic lighting done. Then, you know, just add my CalsoScope logo, and then with this scene, I'll just do it again just cause. This part, one sec. Let's go back to the crowd. This part needs to be darker, actually, a little bit. It's a little bit too bright. So this scene, I think it kind of would look good with an effect of grain. So I'm gonna add some grain to it. So I'm gonna go Control Alt Shift E, Command Shift E if you're on the Mac. Merge them all together. Then I right click, make a smart object, and then I go to Topaz, Lens Effect, and Grain. And I think this looks good with some grain. Like, this looks kind of like a classic feel that I get from this. So I'm gonna go with Topaz Grain on there, and that is how I got my dramatic lighting done. So yeah, guys, it's not too hard to do. It just is a matter of using levels and then uncovering your mask with white, because white reveals, black will hide. Always keep that in mind. Just like think about that like a couple times a day, and you're gonna just remember that. It's gonna help you out a lot. White reveals, black hides, and then just get creative with your hue and saturation layers for your lighting, and just really have fun with it and experiment. It's gonna take a while to do your lighting because it is the part that takes the longest of most of my edits. The lighting just takes forever and ever, but it always comes out to what I want it to look like at the end of the day. So I appreciate you guys tuning into another video. I hope this helped you out for sure. Someone actually brought this to my attention in a live stream. I forget who it was, but I thank you for bringing this to my attention. And until next time, man, everybody stay scoped. Let me know what other tutorials you want to see down below. And I'm out, man. Peace.